Thank you for the bracha. And Bez Hashem, you'll all dance at the Chasana in Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Bez Hashem, Tizamin. Now, LiMayseh, we try here, Bez Hashem. First of all, we saw last week the various shitas when it comes to Gimel Daled Beitzim, or whether it's the amount of the normal Suda that a person eats, and that's what's considered an amount, which is Kfiyas Suda. And maybe what we have to try to do, Bez Hashem, is to maybe, first of all, I don't say we need a limit. If we learned the halacha, we're supposed to do like it says in the halacha. But LiMayseh, we need to explain. There are certainly a lot of people that are not machmir, like the HBrachos says. Lechatchila is supposed to be machmir. The HBrachos says on Gimel Daled Beitzim. And if you have a cake amount of Gimel Daled Beitzim, the HBrachos says you should be chayshish. Then the HBrachos says, and if it's something that doesn't have all three t'nayim, the HBrachos says, vada yesh lachish. We know there's a lot of people that are vada not chayshish. So maybe you'll say they're saimich on the other shita, the shita that the HBrachos says you shouldn't be saimich on, the chatchila, which is the shita if you have the amount that is eaten in a meal. And last time we spoke, we said that amount is a very big amount. That's 12 beitzim, which is a large amount. So that already itself is a limit. Or like the Aruch HaShulchan and the Balatanya, that seem to say that it's not an issue until a person has a tremendous amount, which is almost 23 beitzim. And therefore, it would seem that LiMayseh, we have enough limudei schlusim. Shilas, if it's just even more than a limud schus, I'm going to say before we get into the ikar topic today, some other shitas over here that perhaps can help us in this this quest for a limud of schus. For example, there's a chazayin ish. This chazayin ish is brought down in the Orchos Rabbeinu in Chelik Aleph in the 80th page, Ois Samech Aleph. And if you want to, for further elaboration, take a look. The chazayin ish Dan's Ditzad in the Sefer itself, in Orach Chaim Chavav Sivkot Ches. Here it says, Shomati Me'agoyin Rechaim Kanievsky, he heard from the chazayin ish that if a person in Loi Achal Hishir Suda Shal Erev, let's say he didn't eat that amount. It's, in other words, we're not talking about where he's going with the other shita, the Goyin shita, where he ate mamish a large amount of mezainis. We're going now with the shita of the Gimel Daled Beitzim shita, we'll call it. And we're saying that a person shouldn't get into that shaila of eating Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of Pasa Bekisnין, because he's getting already into that shaila that perhaps it's considered a Kfiyas Suda. On that said the chazayin ish, that kol she'ein by shir Daled Beitzim of kemach, believe the other things, the eggs, the chocolate, even the water, it sounds like over here. It's got to be, when we say Gimel Daled Beitzim, we mean Gimel Daled Beitzim of flour. Now, basically, that's a game changer. If that's the case, a person can eat an entire sponge cake, and it's certainly not Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of flour. It takes a long time to get the Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of flour. I was once a certain kiddush, and somebody was eating a large amount of fudge cake, tremendous amount. That's an understatement. And someone told him, you have to wash, you have to bench, this. Maisa, the chazayin ish, it doesn't begin. According to the chazayin ish, he certainly did not have a Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of flour. That is a tremendous amount, everybody say. I don't know if this was the pashtus. I know that the Sefer Zayis Bracha on page 29 brings down that Rav Elyashiv held not like this. Again, it could be just l'chumra. Rav Elyashiv held that we're mitzaref the holes, and we're mitzaref the tavlinim, we're mitzaref all the other foods that go into a cake. Look, on a pretzel, this isn't going to help us much, because the pretzel is just basically flour. And even on a kokosh cake, a regular yeast cake, this isn't going to help us that much. But on a sponge cake, it certainly helps us. And you have to know that that's already a very respectable idea. What I saw that the Zayis Bracha brings from Rav Elyashiv, I found that to be a tremendous, tremendous chumrah. They bring from Rav Elyashiv that he said that we include the air also in the cheshbon of Gimel Daled Beitzim. Now, it's known that all over halacha, there's a discussion about adding the air, but that was always legabe the amount of being yotze the mitzvah of matzah in mitzvahs, because in mitzvahs or in averis, we go after the volume and not after the weight. But over here, we're trying to figure out an amount, which is a kviyas suda. Amount of kviyas suda is an amount that fills a person up. Why should that be tali if there's air bubbles? Why should we include the air bubbles in the amount over here? To go after volume is very difficult, and I wonder out loud if the Mechaber Sefer misunderstood the people that he's quoting. But Al Kapanim certainly will add this as a Liman's Chos number one, according to the HaRav Shulchan, 23 beitzim, and the Graz 23 beitzim. According to the Pash, there's 12 beitzim, and there's a shita clearly out there of Daled beitzim. But that shita of Daled beitzim, maybe you could be mitzarif the shita of the Chazon Ish that we're not mitzarif. That's number one. Is that crystal clear before I go weiter? Next, what is the Rav explained? When are you mitzaref air? When you're not mitzaref air? Air, where we find in halacha that you mitzaref air is when the Torah says eat a kazayas, or even if Chazal came along and said eat a kazayas, or the Torah says don't eat a kazayas. So there, the chashivas of the davar is its volume, not its weight. That's a concept. That's a machlekes. That's how we paskin. Here we're discussing: is this an amount that a person is kaveyas sudan? That's a tali in mitzias. Does a person get full? What to tell you if a person gets full? You don't get full from the air holes, or okay,
that's the explanation. Yeah,
Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, are you chayiv on air?
Yom Kippur. First of all, even though there it talks about, Svia and these things, but it's clear that there are Gedarim. The Torah said Gedarim. It's no different than any Avera. So in the end of the day, even if you are Chayiv in air, which is Bechal not Pashit, it's the Minchas Chinuch has a big arichas about this, Gederach Shalom Minchas Chinuch. But here I couldn't imagine that it should have enough Kamina. Now, this is number one. Number two, let's go to the next idea that we require certainly some type of a limit for. We know that we have the Mogen Avram Shita, which in itself is a very big machlekes. Shabur Paskin's like the Mogen Avram, and we know that you have to be careful, or Moshe Paskin's like this Mogen Avram, that you have to be careful that if you're eating an amount of the substitute bread, in other words, enough crackers, cake, whatever, and you eat that together with the chicken, the vegetables, etc. If it's the amount of a substitute of bread that you would have, i.e., if you would normally have 2 slices of bread, 3 slices of bread, and then the rest of the food fills you up to 12 beitzim worth, let's say a chasana meal, he has a roll and then he eats and eats and eats. But let's say he has, so then he needs to wash anyways because it's a roll. But let's say he has a couple of pieces of cake and then he eats and eats and eats and eats. Like Ramesha in the Tshuva. So we know that Ramesha told us you have to be machmer in this Mogen Avram. That itself, of course, is a very big machlekes. Excuse me. And I think we mentioned last time that there really are many that argue on this Mogen Avram. I mentioned last time the Shita. It's true, the Mishnah Berurah goes with the Mogen Avram, or Moshe goes with the Mogen Avram, the Baal Tanya goes with the Mogen Avram, but LiMayseh, the Aruch HaShulchan in Sifet Zayin argues on the Mogen Avram, and the Chazon Ish, no less than the Chazon Ish, and Orach Chaim Siman Chavav Sivkat and Ches. Chazon Ish seems to argue on the Mogen Avram, which means if you see somebody in a chassan and he's eating 3 pieces of cake, 5 pieces of cake, and then he's just filling up, but he didn't eat enough cake that it should be daled beitzim, mitzad the cake being the issue, and he didn't eat enough cake mitzad the sudas harav biker. So he certainly can't say anything, because it's true according to the Mogen Avram he has a major problem. Rav Moshe says he shouldn't do it, and I wouldn't do it. But Al Kapanim, he can't say anything. This Jew, he's such a big guy, and he knows the sheet of the Chamin Moshe and Sivkat and Gimel, the Berkei Yosef and Sivkat and Vav, where they argue on the Mogen Avram. Okay, so that's already a limitz chus if we see somebody doing it. The shaila is, like I said before, is there something more than the limitz chus? We saw last time that the Mogen Avram, Rav Moshe has a very big chiddush in the Mogen Avram. It's not just pretzels or crackers that are malafis to pass. In other words, it's not just pretzels and food that you could say you're eating with the bread. It's even cake, something that has nothing to do with the meal. Excuse me. It's even cake, something that has nothing to do with the chicken and whatnot. And we saw last time there are those that say, no, the only time it's a problem if it's imamish eating it together like crackers, that's when it's a problem. The Mogen Avram Ramosha was not like that. So again, like I said, we have already a limatzchus. If you see somebody eating cake, he's saying those shitas that number one, the Mogen Avram is a chiddush. Number two, maybe the only time you have to be worrying about the Mogen Avram if it's a type of a food, which is a cracker that's malanthis is a pass. Ramosha is not like that. Let's see if we have more of a limatzchus though. Over here. Moshe has another chumrah if you're paying attention to this Mogen Avram. Moshe goes in that tshuva in Gimel Lamed Beis that not only is it even cake, which is not malaf zapas, but Moshe also says, and therefore it does not have to be Gimel Daled Beitzim. It's enough, whatever is the amount that's a normal bread amount in the meal, whatever your substitute is. So if the normal amount of bread in the meal is 3 pieces of bread, having 3 pieces of 3 pieces of bread worth of crackers, that's already going to be an issue. That's a chiddush in Ramosha. In the Balatanya, which is brought really in the Sharatzin, and Zikot in your test, the lashon over there is Harigama yedei lifton ein shem suda alea b'pachas mika gimel beitzim pas. It sounds like from the Mogen Avram, from the Graz, the Balatanya, Sharatzin really, that they're arguing on Ramosha, and that the only time that we say you have the problem of the Mogen Avram is when you have a bread amount of at least gimel beitzim, not just the person has 1 piece of bread, 2 pieces of bread. I don't care if that's the amount of bread you would normally have. Here, it's not enough to have 1 slice, 2 slices, if that's the normal amount you'd have. You'd have to have 3 beitzim worth of mezainis in order to get the shaila started. They're really bemis, the Taurus Chaim, and Tzivkat and Tezvav, it says first, become like near dal kapanim shir kedechil's prat anu gimel dal beit in yoichel me'apas gamim oichel imay baser. The pachas mizeh, you can never say that the mezainis gets the chashivas of being considered a bread substitute that we're going to say you can actually consider it bread mamish until you have at least gimel daled beitzim. So
which
this
is practically what, 2 pieces of cake the Rav said last week?
No, but now we're saying that it would be more than 2 pieces of cake. 2 pieces of cake is probably, especially if you add with this the chazanish. 2 pieces of cake would have like that, 2 beitzim or something. We're saying now that if you this, until you have Ramosha sounds like, so just as long as you have whatever's the amount of bread you normally have, let's say it's even a slice of bread in a meal. Let's say a Shabbos meal, person has a piece of challah, 2 slices of bread, that's berach. So then if you'd have 2 slices worth of crackers, so then you have the problem of the Mogen Avram. And if you fill yourself up afterward, you have the problem of the Mogen Avram. That's Ramosha. The Graz doesn't sound like that. The Graz says it doesn't start even the Mogen Avram until I have Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of bread, worth of crackers, which is a substitute of bread. So how much is that? That could be, I don't know, at least 4 slices, I guess. 4 slices worth of crackers. That's a whole different story. So again, if we're going to see somebody sitting down in a simcha and he's having 3 pieces of cake and tons of food, first of all, the Mogen Avram is not pashut. Second of all, the cake is filled with not flour. Third of all, even if you want to have the Mogen Avram is a machlekes, but even if you want to have the Mogen Avram, it's maybe only if you eat the amount of gimel daled beitzim worth of bread. And 3 pieces of cake is not gimel daled beitzim worth of bread necessarily. So therefore, there's a lot here what to be saimach on. Is that clear, everybody say? Another Nakuda.
Rebbe, are you saying therefore that Gimel Daled Beitzim of bread is a lot more than Gimel Daled Beitzim of Mazonos? Is that what they're trying to say?
Well, first of all, especially according to the Chazanish, that we don't add in all the other stuff. We don't add in, we only add the flour. So then for sure, unless he's having crackers. But again, my point is simple. My point is Ramosha sounds like a comment that the person has already a kazayas. If that's the amount he would have during a meal, that's enough for us. Ramosha says in Daled Mem Aleph that if he has a kazayas worth of mezainis, a pasav of bekisnין, right, that's already enough. Sounds like for Ramosha, if you have 1 piece of cake and that's the normal amount of bread that he would have, and then tons of chicken, vegetables, whatever, he's going to have to bench. That's a tremendous chiddush, Rabbi Say. It could be that nothing starts until you have Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of the Mezainis product. Because you can't say that the Chashivitz without Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of Mezainis product. Now it's clear?
So why would you need the other things? That I'm missing a point. Why would you need
Again, Gimel Daled Beitzim itself is a machlekes. The Mogen Avram is going maybe with the Shita that in order to be a problem of Bekisnin, it has to be the amount's worth of a Sudas Erev Boiker. So now we're saying, even according to the Shita that it's Sudas Erev Boiker, so one way to get there is by eating 12 pieces of bread. Another way to get there is by eating 4 pieces of bread and the rest vegetables and chicken. But the starting point is, even within the Shita of the Mogen Avram, you got to be eating an amount of bread, which is Gimel Dal Beitzim. Clear? Not clear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Clear?
Thank you.
I can explain it again if the other ones.
Say it, Derek, say it again, please. Why not?
Okay. Like this, Rabbi Say, is before I get to the Mogen Avram, there's a machlekes if you need Gimel Dal Beitzim of the Mezainis product alone, or the amount of a Sudas Erev Biker worth of the Mezainis problem. One machlekes, very big shaila, the Chatchila be machmir. Okay, now there's a new shaila, the Mogen Avram. It would seem from the Paiskim that the Mogen Avram that says that you don't need to have 12 slices of bread. It's enough to have the bread as the mezainis as a bread substitute, and you can fill up yourself with the rest of the things, chicken, vegetables. The simple understanding, it would seem, of the Graz and the Chartzian is that even that shita is going already, that you need the amount in general, the amount when we're talking about to be called a Suda is not a Gimel Dal Beitzim. It's the amount of a big Suda, 12 Beitzim. In that Shita that you need 12 Beitzim comes the Mogen Avram with the Chiddush and says you don't need 12 Beitzim worth of mezainis. It's enough to have mezainis plus the vegetables. How much mezainis do I need plus those vegetables? Ramosha says anything, whatever's a bread substitute, even a kazayis. On that, it would sound like from the Mishnah Berurah that no. The starting point of the Mogen Avram is that he's working with the second shita that you need a Sudas Erev Biker. Within the Sudas Erev Biker, now you need at least Gimel Daled Beitzim worth of the mezainis. Then you could add the veggies. Then you could add the chicken.
Let's go on with the other shita that I understand it better. Thank you. Shkoyach.
Is everybody clear now?
Yeah,
now it's crystal clear.
Yeah.
That's number 2. Number 3 is I found over here. Again, I'm just
Everybody
giving
agree?
Yeah. Me, myself.
That's much better. Yeah. So now let's go with the other sheet that you need much more than Gimel Daled. You need a 12 Beitzim or whatever. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Now it's going to Maisa. I'm just giving Limudei Schlusim over here, or better than Limud Schlusim. I'm explaining the Welt. Another Nekudes is over here. Der Aruch HaShulchan in Sif Yud Ches. I found it very interesting, this Aruch HaShulchan. I'll explain to you why. The way we learned the Aruch HaShulchan, the very simple Limud Schluss. Everything is simple. You don't get into trouble until you're eating 23 Beitzim worth of, what could be the problem, basically, according to the Aruch HaShulchan? Unless the Aruch HaShulchan, excuse me, unless the Aruch HaShulchan is, give me one moment, let me look as I speak this out. Maybe the Aruch HaShulchan is worrying about the Shita of Gimel Daled Beitzim. If I'm not mistaken, he's not. The Aruch HaShulchan, I guess he brings both Shitas. Maybe that's why he's explaining. Just one moment. All right, let's see. The Aruch HaShulchan Sif Yud Ches says, there were those that screamed, Alma, this terrible minig, that when they're at a simcha, you see already Rabbi Yisai, this is not a new thing. The Ramoshes Juva about them eating too much at a simcha, and kamim in dogim and food and bekisnin.
Please put on that.
And they eat without natil sidaim and amoitzim, bersamazin, all this. They eat cakes, all types of things. They eat boimels. I don't know what boimels are, but it sounds gewaldig. There's no suffix that he writes, ain't suffix that they have to wash and bench. And even in Yizar Shaloi Harbe Mapas, he says, what do you mean? What about the Mogen Avram? So some people are careful with this. He was trying to bring out, nobody knew this. Of a Roiv Hamoin Yisrael don't know from this. And Chalila to say that, they're doing wrong. I'm sorry. He says, you should never do this stuff, but you can't make a macha. Then he says, Ksas limatzchus. Nearness daiti, a kula from the Rif, that the lashon of the Rif is mashma achol b'tayis kviyas. It sounds like he's having a meal. It's mashma, let's say I don't have a meal. It's not totally in the amount. We've been going the whole time, it's totally in the amount. But it sounds like maybe it's totally in the tzura how he eats. Is he eating in an arai oifen, like a temporary way, or a very, settled kavua dik way? He said if it's a real meal, you take off your jacket, you sit down. He says over here, like a smorgasbord azai, you just chapanash. And some eat it even standing and whatnot. Sounds like, then he ends with the words, stay away, but I don't know. This is already a new limatzchus. This limatzchus sounds like, and I saw Taka in the Aliba de Ilchasa, is one of these journals from Yaakov Hillel. He comes out every once in a while. In the 28th journal, they bring this down from Rav Nitzan Karelitz, that he says that when you're eating something standing, the Rambam says maybe you shouldn't eat standing. It's not healthy. It's based on the Gemara and Gittin, fine. But if you're not listening to the Rambam, and you're eating standing and arai and whatever, that in essence can't have a kfiyas to it. We always established over here that kfiyas doesn't mean a tsura. It means an amount. But the Aruch HaShulchan sounds like a new limatzchus. Now that won't help us necessarily for a chasana, but it'll certainly help us for the smorgasbord, which as it is, nobody really knows what the case Rav Moshe is talking about, having cake in the middle of a chasana. Maybe there's a Viennese table on the side, I don't know. But upon him, a smorgasbord, this would help us for. A smorgasbord eaten in a sort of a Bahamish fashion over there. So then maybe it's also limatzchus. He's having a little piece of this, a little piece of that, and whatever. So perhaps that also takes away from the shame kviyas. All this Rabbi Isai explains a little bit the Welt and v'hurachem mechaper oven. This Rabbi Isai is part one. Now, before we go into Siv Zayin, and that's a chiddush, I must tell you, it's in Aruch HaShulchan, the chiddush. Before we go into Siv Zayin, I wanted to mention ha'ara that I had to the Olam on this tshuva of Rav Moshe. It's a slightly side topic, but it's something very important, I think. After hearing all this, a person that wants to do the right thing, he's going to be careful. Even though I gave a lot of limudei skosim right now, make a chazara. Number one, maybe it's only if it's a certain amount of flour. 4 beitzim worth of flour. Number two, the whole Magen Avraham is a chumrah, and maybe that Magen Avraham is only a kam. I'm having gimel daled beitzim of the bread substitute. Number three, now we're saying it depends on the tzur that you're eating it. Maybe if you're eating it in a right temporary fashion, maybe it doesn't get this halacha. But l'maaseh nachal, everyone agrees that probably the right thing to do is like Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe is Rav Moshe. So this time you want to do like Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says, don't eat these cakes, and you want to try and finish up this issue. You don't want to get this stuff. But on the other hand, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. So what do? I have my chicken. I have my my rice and this that. I'm still hungry. I want a piece of cake or something. So what do you do? So now I was thinking 2 things. Number one is that, let's see, maybe what I could do is I'll make a mezainis. And then after I make the mezainis, I'll make an ala mechya. I won't have any more cake. And Shalom Yisrael. And then I'll have my vegetables and my everything. Maybe the whole lumdus of the Magen Avraham is that it's malafis, is a pass. What if I do something which in essence is clearly spalting and showing that this has nothing to do with the pass? I'm having cake, I'll make alamecha, and now I'm starting a new meal. So what about in such a case? Maybe you might have issues with the bracha shein tzricha, and in the case I described, you won't have an issue. Cake, mezainis, almecha, I guess you won't have any more rice, and you won't have any more cake afterward, and whatever, and you'll do that. This is an eitzah. I don't see why it shouldn't work. It's an eitzah. The most that the Magen Avraham can be doing is being malafis as a pass. Even with the chiddush of Rav Moshe, that the lumdus is that the cake is a substitute of the bread. And even though we saw that someone would say it's got to be a food that you eat with the meal, and Rosh Zalman said it's got to be what you eat with the meal, and Rav Moshe argues on that, But even Moshe that argues on that, he means because the way we eat bread today is we'll eat bread in the middle of in the beginning of the Suda, like we have on Shabbos, and then we eat the rest. So it's all called malafis as a pas. It's all related to the pas. But could you say that something is malafis as a pas? At Kama, that you're making it alamicha and it's betzim in essence a whole different Suda. So this Abaisai, I would think that this is taka and Eitzah, and it would get out of the Shiloh. One way to satisfy everybody. All the other limited chosim that we said, first of all, you're probably not having enough of flour, and second of all, anyways, Rosh Zalman, if it's just cake, and and maybe the only time is if you have, like we said, 4 beitzim worth of bread, of mezainis, possible of bekisnin. So there would be a lot to be said. Then I was thinking another eitzah. And the other eitzah, I was thinking, is a much more negaitic eitzah, because usually, how does it work? You'll go to this chasana, you'll have the chicken, the vegetables, everything, and then at the end, they bring out cake, and you're still hungry. Okay, so you could do my thing of bayrei nefashis, and then start with the cake. First of all, it's not so geschmack, because you're probably going to want to drink, and then you get into a bracha, shein tzricha shaila, because the bracha on the drink, now you're going to have to make a new bracha. Not great. Not great. So now, is there any eitzah? I want to have this cake. So at first I was thinking, this is great. This is mamish l'kuli alma that should be mutter. Even Ramesha would be mutter. Lo yimavoy according to Shlomo Zalman. I had chicken, I had vegetables. Now at the end I have cake. Cake is not something you eat with the vegetables. So memela, it never is mitzaref, never the twain shall meet. Even maybe according to Ramesha, we could say that the cake has nothing to do. What was the lumdus or Moshe, the way we just explained it? That this is a bread substitute. The cake at the end of the meal, everybody says, it's not a bread substitute. It has to be the aleph beis malafis as a pas, according to the Magen Avraham. It's got to be something that's coming on the same team as the bread, as the meal. Over here, it's not coming on the same team. It's not a food.
You're making a mezainis on it separately. Isn't that the best raya?
Sorry?
You have to make a mezainis on it separately on a cake and dessert. So isn't that the best raya that is not connected? Why do you have to come on this not lafis in the past?
No, not in a bread meal now. We're in a regular stam without bread. I'm going without bread, and he has to make another bracha because it's another food. You can make a mezainis on rice in the middle of you add vegetables and chicken and rice, so then that's all part of the meal. But I don't think if you need a raya, it's pashut. Cake is not anything to do with the meal. It's not coming to malafis, the cake. Ramesha said it maybe bishlema, according to Shlomo Zalman, it doesn't begin because cake is not something that malafis anyways. And Ramesha, we explained, is that since you're having the bread at the beginning of the meal, the cake is the bimkoim of the bread at the beginning of the meal. So therefore, you can say everything is malafis to pass. Okay, a chiddush. But if the cake is coming at the end of the meal, Avadi can't say that the food that I ate already is coming to malafis to pass. It's minanimna. So I was thinking that this is the best eights of all. You'll have the chicken, you'll have the potatoes, everything. And then afterward, have a cake. Or have a few crackers even. Okay, the crackers, even if they're at the end, they're certainly not being malafis, and certainly the cake. And now I don't have to start with my shtick of making a bar nefashis in the middle. Stop. You have chicken, vegetables, then cake. So then it doesn't connect itself, and then everyone could be happy. And even the Magen Avraham would never answer such a case, and even Ramesha would never answer such a case. Clear, everybody say? Clear?
But that would be different than the shiloh of having cake at the end of a meal, then, whether you have to make a bracha on it or not.
I'm not in the case of the bread meal right now, everybody say. Bread meal, we're going to talk about in Yom Hashem. I'm in a case of where we're trying to figure out if we have the problem of the Magen Avraham, that the vegetables are mitzaref to the mezainis. I'm explaining that the only time the vegetables are mitzaref to the mezainis is a kama the mezainis is the ikr, and everybody's coming to be malaf as the mezainis. Ramesha took it to a next degree, even cake, which doesn't make sense that it's being malaf as the cake. Avapikein, it's a bread substitute. But to say there's a bread substitute at the end after chicken, it's minanimna. L'chayra, it's pashit b'tachas abashtis.
So let me be mitargem. The Rav is raising a sequence question because the mezainis is coming at the end. And Reb Shlomo, this has nothing to do with the machlokes that we have heard and we'll hear again, whether in a bread meal you make a
Right.
mezainis on the cake that's for dessert. That's a
Right,
separate
right.
machlokes.
That's
Nothing
what
to do
he's
with that.
explaining.
That's only when you wash. Is that
Right,
clear?
I agree. I understand. Sure,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So now,
sorry.
Rabbi said everyone agrees my eitzah is the simplest eitzah. That's what you'll do. I think my eitzah might be the worst eitzah of all. I think my eitzah might be the problem, a whole new problem, which really, in essence, has nothing to do with our sugya. But I'm going to mention it now because we're talking LiMayseh. So when you talk LiMayseh, no games. I want you to know what's the emes. I think this might touch on to a problem, which is really not in our siman. And I'll give a little bit of a background because it's something we discussed over here. That's the only reason I give my rights, my rishus to speak about this. We discussed in the past, how does this work? In the end of the day, this thing is flour, this thing is water. So what's going on over here? The pretzels, the cake, everybody, all these guys, what's going on over here that you're getting out of making a birchas hamazon midaraisa? We spoke about this in the first year in Bekisnin. What's going on over here that we don't require you to make a birchas hamazon l'chayra? It's all these svaras, not kaveh suda and this, that. Ich mean, is it bread or is it not bread? It's possible bekisnin. So we said back then, if you remember, basically two mahalchim. One mahalach that we explained was basically two mahalchim. One mahalach was that in essence, really, you didn't eat here a kedei svia. Since you didn't eat a kedei svia, so therefore, minat Torah, you don't have to bench anyways. I have 5 pretzels, 10 pretzels. You're right that it should in essence be birchas hamazon, but why birchas hamazon? Wait a minute, because it's bread? Wait a minute, but anyways, minat Torah, you didn't have a kedei svia. So the Chazal were the ones that came along and said that if you have one slice of bread and you're not full, you make an alamich, you make a birchas hamazon. The same Chazal came along and said, well, it depends. If you're having real bread, then yes. But if you're having this type of interesting bread and you're anyways not full, so then hey mamru, hey mamru. According to that, what's the reason why when I have a certain amount of mezainis, I don't minat Torah have to bench? Because you didn't get a kedei svia. So therefore, Chazal came along and said, if it's not pas amiti, it's a pas bekisnin, so then it's fine. Okay. The other malach that we saw is that really you're right. You have to bench. Why is it that the Chazal came along and said over here, make an alamichya? So we explained because it's totally in a machlekes, if the gimel brachos is deraisa or gimel brachos is only a takana derabanan. Of course, birchas hamazon is deraisa, but maybe the gimel brachos, the takana of having gimel brachos is maybe only a derabanan. See that it's very good because I'm making an alamechia, and with an alamechia I could be yotzei. Chazal came along that same derabanan that said normally you need 3. They came along over here and said it's enough to have a alamechia, which is a birchas hamazon in essence on a deraistic level. Okay, what's the nafkamina klapei us? Let's go over our case again. This guy had vegetable, he had chicken, he had everything in the world, and now he just needs one last bit of cake, and then he's filled. Oy vey rabbi sai. What's the din here? This guy is having cake, and now the cake is filling him up. Look at this. So if the cake is filling him up, what was the reason until now? I told you, at least if one of the shitas that we said, that it's enough to make an alamichya. The reason was because anyways, he's not having a deraisa, he's not getting full anyways, minat Torah. So memela, no, the guy's not getting filled up. So if he's not getting filled up, no, let him make an alamichya. Anyways, it's not minat Torah. But this guy is having 2 pieces of cake at the end of a ganze meal. He walks out, he's walking like this. He has to hold himself up, the fellow. As a male is such a guy, he's already full. The cake made him full. What happens when I eat cake and the cake makes me full? Now you can't say anymore that the reason why on Baza Babakisnin we make a la'amicha is because you're not full. I am full. So chayra, this is the worst eitzah of all. Now, the emes is, this is Tali in a very famous shaila. The Bir Alocha brings this shaila really later on. I think it was in Kupei Dalid. I didn't write it here. I didn't actually plan on talking about this, but I'm looking as I go. I think there's a tshuva of the Radbaz, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, the Bir Alocha is in the end of Kupei Dalid. There's a tshuva of the Radbaz, and the tshuva of the Radbaz says like this: what happens if I only need a small amount of bread? We'll give the dimyan to us in a moment, but I need a small amount of bread to fill me up. is that already going to be Machayev mi birchas hamazon min haTorah? And the Rabbah says, for example, I'm a zakin. For example, I'm a chayla, I need a small amount. Or, for example, says the Rabbah, I ate already and I just need one piece of bread to fill me up. And my chayiv birchas hamazon min haTorah. Says the Rabbah, what's a nafkamina? Nafkamina, very big nafkamina. Let's say you have a chayiv min haTorah and somebody else wants to be moitzi you, and he only has a chayiv d'Rabbanan. So if you say no, berega that you have that last slice, you're now chayiv min haTorah and birchas hamazon, because I don't care how you got here, but this piece of bread fills you up. The Rabbah says, I don't even know what the shaila is. It's the most pashut thing in the world. Rabbah says, pashut, no question, avada, even if you have one piece of bread, if that's the piece that was the makeh bepatish, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, and now this is the piece of bread that put you over the top, and that's what made you full. You have to bench birchas hamazon min deraisa. Put all this information together, and maybe my idea is a very bad idea. What was my idea? Let him have the vegetables and the chicken and all the food. And then at the end, he'll have his 2 pieces of cake. And I said, great, that's according to everybody not going to become one meal. But now you got into a whole new problem. Maybe you're getting full from cake. And maybe cake has a din of bread. What's the only reason why normally we say cake isn't bread? Because anyways, you're not getting filled. But you are getting filled. And what are you going to say? Nah, but come on, they didn't get filled from just the bread. The Rabbah says, who cares? If you get filled from the bread as a result of some other reason, it doesn't matter. Then you still chayiv birchas hamazon min haTorah. So therefore, maybe my idea is the worst idea, and that might be the biggest problem of the entire day. Could you get out of my issue? First of all, the Bialoch has it sad to say that the Rabbah means that you didn't get filled up, like I said, from chicken, potatoes, and then one last piece of bread. He means you had bread, you made birchas hamazon, and then 20 minutes later, you had another time you watched, had one piece of bread, and that filled you up. So therefore, we say that your svi is from bread. That's one shaila, but it's not pashut. And there was another thing, maybe taka by cake, like we said before. Maybe Chazal came along and said, and even if you get full, but since birchas hamazon deraisa, since the brachas of birchas hamazon is only requiring really one min haTorah, so the alamichya could satisfy that requirement. But if somebody's going to ask me, is this the best eitzah? I'm going to tell him I think it's maybe the worst eitzah. That's what Rabbi say, a separate aura. It's a very important aura in my opinion. But what came out basically is that cake in the beginning of the meal. Ramesh is against. We have a lot of limudei schusim. The end of the meal, cake, again, non-bread meal, cake at the end of the meal, I would say that would be the thing which scares me even more. And that's a very, very common case. Because if that's the makeh bepatish, you have this brand new shaila that you're getting filled up from a piece of cake, and that might be considered as if the bread substitute, the cake, is filling you. And the only reason why you don't make a birchas hamazon normally on cake is maybe because you weren't Saveya. But if this is the thing which is giving me the Sfia, and we saw from the Rabbah that which gives you the Sfia might require birchas hamazon, so then even on cake, we could say the same thing. I think that's a bit of a problem, and therefore I made a big mention of it.
And if you know that your meaning is to do that, do you have to wash before?
It's going to definitely be a suffix. So I would wash on a piece of bread.
What was that?
According to what I just said, I'm being asked from Reb David over here. He said, how much cake would be a problem at the end of the meal according to this? According to this, who knows? Who knows the answer to this question? Even a small amount of cake, if that's what's filling you up, as long as it's a kazayis, obviously, right? Maybe it has to be a kazayis of flour, fine. But as long as you have a kazayis worth of flour, any piece of kokosh cake, or 5 pretzels, 10 pretzels, whatever, have a kazayis worth of flour, you're going to have this problem.
Well, didn't the Rabbah say even without a kazayis, you have the problem?
I don't think the Rabbah says without a kazayis, that I don't know. But that's already a different sugya. I'm not getting into the sugya. It says ochalta v'tzavato v'rachta. So maybe the aleph base is ochalta, but that's not our sugya. So let's assume a kazayis, because anyways, most of the time you have a kazayis. Okay, everybody say. Now, let's end off the shir with one very geschmack shaila. As a matter of fact, I want to make it so geschmack that I'm just going to get myself a cup of hot water. In the meantime, I'll be back in one moment.
By the Kiddush what? There was a question here from the floor, quite a Rav.
You should know, Rabbi Isai, I just threw you a curveball. That's not the in the sugya. Nobody talks about that. That's called a curveball. I hope the Olam cop that.
I don't know why I'm muted on my computer, but I'm not muted in the main. Can the Rav hear me?
I hear every word.
Yes,
I hear every word.
From the floor at the Kiddush. We're gonna have to have a separate share from you on Mechshalim at Kedushin. But Ashali Kiddush, you ate cake on the Kiddush, and you made an al mechia, and then you change your mind and you're eating.
So that's a whole sugya, and I'm not going to go into it now. It's a topic. Maybe I'll discuss it next time, but it's a very major topic. It's a very major topic. It's the sugya of nimlach. It's a very, very big topic. That's Hashem. That's not my way of saying, we'll come back to it and not come back to it. B'li neder, I want to come back to it. That's a major sugya. Now I'm going to end the shir with one of the most important shilas in Pasuk Bekisnin. We got to start it now. It's something that we even touched on in the past. And this is a very seistic shaila. We're about to see over here in Siv Zayin, the Olam already started Siv Zayin for sure, and has seen over here that there are three types of Pasuk Bekisnin, the Mamula, the Parich, the this, the that, all the different types. And there's a very simple shaila. What am I going to do with something today that doesn't fit in to these three types? I used to be involved in kashrus, and then I got smart and I got out of it. And one of the products that was brought to Eretz Yisrael that was potentially trying to get a hechsher was a soft pretzel, a hot pretzel. Who remembers those from the Haim or Boisai? And one of the reasons why the kashrus organization over here did not want to give a hechsher was because what bracha do you make on a soft pretzel? And they didn't want to make a mechshel of the rabbim. What's the shaila? Here I have something, a soft pretzel that doesn't fit into memula. It's not filled. It's not niloish. Just flour, water, maybe some oil. It's no different than your challah on Shabbos, for sure not. It's certainly not parich. So what bracha do you make? Do you say, well, let's see. All these examples of Chazal are just examples of giving me a idea of something that there's no kfiyas on that thing. That's one way of looking at it. Mamula is an example of something that people aren't kaveh on. Parich is something you can't eat a lot of this stuff. It's too hard to eat because you have to chomp and chomp. Or mamula, it's too hard to eat all the fruits and the cake, the pies, whatever. Or even niloish. A person can't be kaveh suda. There's just so much cake that you could eat. Okay. Now, what if I have something though that I look around in the world and I see it's not the derech of people to have for a meal. It's a derech of people to have for a snack. Like, for example, when pizza first came to America, nobody had it as a meal. Pizza was had as a snack. So how do you don something that, so pizza maybe is different because pizza is mamula. So pizza maybe has one of the t'nayim. But what happens if I have something that doesn't have any of the t'nayim? Do I say you must fit into the t'nayim or you are hamoitzi? Or do I say, no, the t'nayim are just there to help me out. But if I have something which is clearly not there for kfiyas, the t'nayim are just giving me attitudes of ideas of what's not considered a kfiyas. But what happens if I have something that is clearly not a kfiyas? Because I see from the oilam, I see that they don't eat this thing as a kfiyas. And basically in Yeshiva Shesprach, is it a simin or is it a siba? Is it that mamula, parich, niloish, all of these things, you need to fit into a category to get the shem mezainis? Or no, I don't need to fit into a category in order to get the shem mezainis. It's enough if you are clearly not something which is coming for the purpose of kfiyas. The nafkamina I just mentioned will be soft pretzels. I think soft pretzels is a great example of something that people don't have as a meal. That's clear. You have it as a snack, but it doesn't fit into the other categories. It doesn't have niloish. It's not 50% meiperis or whatever. It's not parich. Clearly, it's not mamula. Now they sell these other things in the pizza stores they sell these things. I don't know if they have them in America, but they look like these little mini tiny garlic rolls, little tiny mini garlic things. And people buy them as a snack. So what's the din of them, right? I think they're called garlic balls.
What are they called? They're called, no, garlic what?
Balls, I
Nuts?
think, no?
Garlic
nuts. Oh, thank you.
K-N-O-T-S, nuts? K-N-O-T-S?
Knots, like a knot. Garlic knots, thank you. So garlic knots, are clearly something that l'chayra people have as a snack. That kaveh suda on them. So how do I don it? But it doesn't have parich, it doesn't have mamula, it doesn't have nilash. So the basic shaila is are these just ideas trying to make my life easier to know what things people are kaveh suda on? Or are they not ideas they're just pashit, halacha, mamish, it's a siba. If you fit into this category, good. If not, not. So what's it tell you in Rabbi Yisai, this shaila? It's telling you much more. Is Sayyidistic a shaila in our sugya. Rabbi Yisai, we have three shitas over here. These three shitas are different rishonim. Are these three shitas arguing on each other? Or are these three shitas all agreeing? Each one of them is telling you what by me in Barcelona, and what by me in Naharda, and what by me for some Gahat Bayins, what by us was a type of a food that people weren't kaveh on. The shita that says mamula, does he say, okay, if you tell me pretzels people aren't kaveh on, I'll give in? But he was giving a good example of things that people aren't kaveh on. If these shitas are agreeing, so then it's great. Then obviously it's just ways of figuring out, is this a type of food that people are kaveh on or not? So then if you're going to bring me some new food, no one's going to argue. It's not a type of a food that you're kaveh on. And therefore, pashit, you'll make on it a mezainis and an al mechya. Or no, these shitas argue. If I said the only way you could see these shitas, these shitas argue, is if you say that these shitas held the reason why Chazal came along and said that this kind of a product doesn't have a shame of a moitzi is because it's hard to eat, it's kaisis, it's this, whatever it is. But now they said, therefore, if you fit into this, you're that type of bread which people aren't kaveh on. If you don't fit into this, you get the regular shame bread. This is a big shaila. Now, by saying, it would seem clearly from stima.
Everybody gets it? Yes. Maybe we should repeat it again for the Olam. Again,
shaila
this is very specific shailas.
The shaila is very sadistic. The shaila is there are three examples of pasuk בכיסנין. Are these three examples mishalim? But if you know them in CS is that they're just mishalim, these three shitas. They're just examples. But if you know for sure that you have something that doesn't fit into these three examples, but people pashut don't eat this as a meal, like a garlic knot, so then pashut she's a mezainis. What's enough gemina?
Midin suffix brachos, like the Magen of Ram said.
No, not midin suffix. What's the lumdus of pasuk בכיסנין? The lumdus of pasuk בכיסנין is it's a type of bread that you don't kaveh sudan. So the Chazal gave examples. These Rishonim said this, these Rishonim said this. Everybody said their example of a type of a bread that you're not kaveh sudan. But what if I have a bread that doesn't fit into these three examples, but I'm telling you that people aren't kaveh sudan on it? Because I know that they don't. Gamarnu. So then I say, if you learn that you have to fit into one of these categories, because maybe that was the reason why Chazal said that you make a mezainis, but now they said you make a mezainis only on this specific type, the one that's mamula or the one that's a parach. But if you have something that doesn't fit into any of them, you got to make a maitzi on it. Or no, Chazal gave example. The Chazal said pasuk בכיסנין. The ikr is the lumdus. The lumdus of pasuk בכיסנין is the type of bread that people aren't kaveh sudan. So therefore, if you have something that even if it doesn't fit in, but you know for sure that people don't kaveh sudan on it, then the bracha is going to be a mezainis. Those are very sadistic shaila. Now the truth is, as you're going to learn the sugya, and that's why I wanted to start with this, there's many rayas from all the paiskim and all the rishonim kimat that l'chayra you got to fit into a category. I mean, I think most of us would have thought not like this. We would have thought, look, if it's something you're not kaveh suda, obviously, then that's the type of bread which isn't a shame chashiv bread. And you make a mezainis, and Chazal just saying examples. But what if I prove not like that, Rabbi Yisai? and I prove that no, you got to fit in. And if you don't fit in, then you are bread. How can I prove not like that? If I say, over here, the Shulchan Aruch brings all three shittas. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, Halacha k'divrei kulam. L'chayra, what's the reason why Halacha k'divrei kulam? So it's going to have to be
Put up
dependent
page
on
180, please.
this. It has to
180.
be dependent on this. If I'm going to see in the Beis Yosef that he says, Halacha k'divrei kulam, you know why? Because who cares? They don't argue on each other. Everybody agrees. That's why halacha k'divrei kulam, because no machlokes. Because the mandam parich agrees with mamula,
180.
agrees with they all agree. Everybody agrees. Everyone's just trying to figure out what type of bread is not a chashiv bread that you're kaveh on. So that's why halacha k'divrei kulam. The problem is the Beis Yosef doesn't say that. You know what the Beis Yosef says? That's what we would have said. The Beis Yosef says, you know why halacha k'divrei kulam? Because, says the Beis Yosef, since it's a suffix, now why suffix rabbanan and whatever, but that's what he says. Since it's a suffix, we don't know who's right. Is the real pasul bekisnin pretzels? Is the real pasul bekisnin cake? Is the real pasul bekisnin a pie? We don't know who's right.
Top line.
Therefore, we say suffix lekula. How that works, why it's a suffix, I'm not getting into it. But the lumdis of the Beis Yosef is why we being makel, because of suffix lekula. In other words, is this, whenever you have a shaila, something mizaynis, or is it a moitzi? So we'll say, well, it's a suffix lekula. And we're not going to make the extra brachas if we don't have to. It's probably based on what we explained before, because really you're yoytze the birchas of mazam dal milk anyways, whatever. But Rabbi say, why do you have to say it like that? Don't say I because of suffix. Say push it, because it's not a suffix, because everybody agrees. There's no fight over here. It's clear in the Beis Yosef that no, it's a suffix. And that the mandama that says brittle argues on the mandama and says nilosh, and the mandama says nilosh argues on the mandama and says mamula. And Rabbi Zay, if that's the truth, Rabbi say, so then it comes out. So now, and it's real nafkaminas. Let's say you have a pretzel in the middle of a bread meal. So now, what do? Do you have to make a bracha of a mezainis on the pretzel? The answer is an astounding no. Why? Because, what do you mean? Maybe a pretzel is bread mamish. You see, it's not clear to us that a pretzel is not bread. According to two other shittas, a pretzel's bread. If you learn the other way, they don't argue. Everyone agrees a pretzel's not bread, because it's just an example of something that you're not kaveh on. A pretzel you don't kaveh on, this you don't kaveh on. I'm showing you a real practical nafkamina halacha LiMayseh, which is the emes. That's the halacha. If a person has a pretzel in the middle of the meal, he does not make a mezainis. Why? Because maybe he was yoytze with the bread. So Bezai, what did I just prove to you? I just proved to you that over here, it's a suffix. Each shita argues on the other shita. How can each shita argue on the other shita? Isn't everybody just trying to figure out, is this a type of bread that we're kaveh on? You see from over here, no way. Maybe that's the time of the takana. Is it a bread that you're kaveh on? If it's not a bread you're kaveh on, then you make a mezainis. But now came along the Yishayim and they said, and Chazal said a specific type. If you don't fit into that type, so then nothing to discuss. You have to make a moitzi. The whole machlekes is which was that type. In that machlekes will be makel on all the shitas. But if you're not even in those three shitas, the fact that you're not something that we're kaveh on, it should come out that you have to make on that a moitzi. And this, Abaisai, I tell you, is the pashtis. On a soft pretzel, if you look in the paiskim, you're going to have to make a moitzi. And so too on a garlic knot. And ma'anasa though, the nesivis in his agada, in the Maisinisim in the back, in the Kundras Achan, in the Din Berchas Parimin Zainis Din Gimel, he says, unbelievable. He writes over there that lahedja, not like I just said, against the Beis Yosef and against the Mishabura, against all the paiskim. And he says, the Moira Hayra, it's all tali be'enei Moira. Kol shu path she'ein derech ha'olam l'kvay alav. He says this whole entire business is one big siman. If it's a type of a bread, everybody agrees here. If it's a type of a bread that you're not kaveh on, so then gamarnu, you make a mezainis and alamechia. Who cares if you fit into a category? We're just trying to figure out one thing. Is it a type of bread? In other words, according to the Nesivas, we can go home early. We don't have to learn up the sugyas and try and figure out each shita. Just find out what's going on in Matthias. Is soft pretzels. Do people eat them for a meal? The answer is no. What bracha? Mezainis alamechya. So I was going to come in today and say, no, what should I say? It's an asivis against all the paiskim. So the Nevada, soft pretzels, I don't know. Maybe I won't make on it a mezainis. Maybe I won't make a moitzi on it because now it's a little bit scary because in asivis, but I certainly would pater with a piece of bread. And then I saw something unbelievable in the Zaysa Bracha, in the Bir Halacha, in Simin Gimel, Ois Beis, Dibra Maskal Omnam. He says, V'shleim Zalman Orbach said the minig ha'olam is like the nesivis. It's unbelievable. Hafla. According to that, on a soft pretzel, you make him a zionist. But it's tamur by side. It's against all of the paiskim. Mamash HaRav. So what to do on a soft pretzel by side? Maybe we'll have to continue next week, and we'll have to come back to this. But the Vaila, stay away. What should I say? So this Rabbi Yisai in a nutshell is the greatest sugyas.
Is there a Havamina? 1 second. 1 second. I got to get over this. Can the Rav hear me?
Every word.
I don't know why that goes here. 1 second. Let me go on mute here. Okay, so LiMayseh, according to soft pretzels and those little garlic things, what are we calling them?
Garlic nuts.
Is there a havamina to wash and bench and garlic nuts? You're not
Absolutely. According to the Mishnah Berurah and the Pashtas, the Beis Yosef, you have to wash and bench in them. Absolutely. Should you do that? Definitely not. Because if Rosh Hashanah said the minig is like the Nesivas, then definitely don't do that.
But the Rav just brought this up at the end of the shir and said it's a Chiddush Atzim, right?
It's a Chiddush Atzim that Rosh Hashanah says, but nothing else he says it. So
I mean, is Nesivas brought down halacha and any of the major paiskim? That's the question.
Definitely not. Until Rosh Hashanah, no one brings this Nesivas.
If the Mishnah Berurah doesn't bring it down halacha, why
definitely not?
We don't have to be chayshav as Nesivas.
Yeah, but Ichab Meir from the Minig Oilam.
Okay, I assume this will be continuing next week. So
Bez Hashem, yeah, we're going to continue.
In the meantime,
I'm running out to a chasana. Bracha v'atzlacha.
Amen. For the next week.